7th grade, Chapter 6, Section 3, Solve Equations with Rational Coefficients. Of course, we're going to start with our quick check here, so checking your solution. So the opposite of 5 times x is to divide by 5 on both sides. So if I can get my line. So if I divide one side by 5, I divide the other side by 5. Those 5s go away. All I'm left with is that x, so I bring it down, and x is equal to 35 divided by 7, or 35 divided by 5 is 7. Number 2, negative 8 times z equals 48. I want to get z by itself. The negative 8 is multiplying times the z, so I do the opposite. I divide by negative 8, and I'm left with z equals negative 6. Okay, n divided by 4 equals 7. I want to get the variable n by itself. 4 is dividing it, so the opposite is to multiply both sides by 4. So if you do it to one side, you do it to the other. That leaves me with n equals 7 times 4 is 28. T divided by negative 3. Again, we're dividing, and we want to get that t by itself, so I do the opposite. I multiply by negative 3. And if I do it on one side, I do it on the other. I'm left with t is equal to negative 45. Number 5, a package of 8 juice bottles costs $12. What is the price per bottle? So they tell you how to set it up. Price per bottle. So our price is $12. We have 8 bottles. That gives us a price per bottle of $1.50. Our question, what does it mean to say two quantities are equal? Well, today we'll see that to solve equations with decimal coefficients and to solve equations with fraction coefficients. So decimals and fractions is what we're going to deal with today. So here we have solve 16 equals 2500 n. What do we want to get by itself? N. What's with the n? 2500. What are they doing? Multiplying. So that's the opposite right here of multiplying by 2500 is to divide by 2500 on both sides. And in your calculator you get 64. Then we check it by plugging that 64 back in for n. And 2500 times 64 is indeed a 16, so we know we have it right. So trying one out, 10 equals 5/10 x. What's with the x? 5/10. What are they doing? Multiplying. How do I get rid of it? I do the opposite. I divide. So I divide and I show it on both sides. My 5/10 goes away, and I'm left with x equals 10 divided by a half should be 20. So x equals 20. Jay, as coach, agreed to buy ice cream for all of the team members. Ice cream cones are $2.40 each. Write and solve an equation to find how many cones the coach can buy for $30. Okay, so going back through this, what do we know? We know that ice cream cones are $2.40 each. And the way they have that written, $2.40 each, tells me that I'm taking $2.40 times some number. We don't know yet because we don't know how many cones that we have. My other piece of information is he has $30, which is a total. That goes on one side of the equal sign by itself because it is a total. So now I have 2 4/10 n is equal to 30. They're multiplying, so the opposite is to divide. I divide both sides by 2 4/10, and I get that n is equal to 12.5 cones. Of course, we can't buy half an ice cream cone, so we are going to get 12 ice cream cones. Jamie wants to cut pieces of siding that are each 3.5 feet long. So pieces of siding, we don't know how many pieces of siding, but we do know how long they are. So since we don't know how many, but we know we're doing we're doing more than one, I take 3.5 times x. Feet to fit between a window and the end of the house. If the original piece of siding is 21 feet long, write and solve an equation to find the total number of 3.5 foot long pieces he can cut. So a total of 21 feet, I divide, well, it's 3.5 times x. So the opposite of multiplying by x is to divide by x. I'm left with, or divide by, the opposite of multiplying by 3.5 is to divide by 3.5. If you do it to one side, you do it to the other side. and you get x equals 6 feet. So 6 feet long. Solve 3/4 x is equal to 12/20. Well, we have a fraction on the side, and you've seen me do it a few times when I divide by the reciprocal or multiply by the reciprocal. So in this case, because it's 3/4 x is equal to 12/20, and that 3/4 is multiplying times the x, the quickest way to get the x by itself is to multiply by that 3/4 reciprocal, and you need to do this on your paper in order to get it to stick in your brain. So we multiply both sides by 4/3. Of course, the 4's and the 3's cancel. And then, of course, you can divide 4 into 20, 3 into 12. You multiply across, and you get 4/5. So let's try one. 2/3 x is equal to 6/15. Well, like I said, because we have a fraction times x is equal to 6/15, the quickest way to get the x by itself is to multiply by the reciprocal. So I multiply by 3/2. You do it to one side, you do it to the other. Our 3's cross out, our 2's cross out. We're left with x equals 2 goes into 2 once, into 6 3 times. 3 goes into 3 once, and into 15 5 times. We multiply across. 3 times 1 is 3. 5 times 1 is 5. And we get x is equal to 3/5. Solve -7/9 d is equal to 5. So again, a fraction times d. You just multiply by the reciprocal. Just because it has a negative outside doesn't change the process. So we multiply by -9/7 because 2 negatives make a positive, and we can get rid of them here. And as you can see, 9's cancel, 7's cancel. You do it to one side, you multiply the other side by -9/7. There's nothing to cancel. We're left with -45/7, which can reduce or turn into a mixed number of 6 and 3/7, especially something like this. You can go ahead and check by putting -4/7 back in, -45/7 back into the equation. -2/3 x is equal to 12. I'm going to rewrite it. -2/3 x equals 12. What's with the x? It's a -2/3. How can I get rid of the 2/3? I can multiply by the reciprocal. That works. So instead of, you could also divide by -2/3. Okay, and that would go away. You're left with x. You do it to one side, you do it to the other. But whenever you divide it by a fraction, remember, you really multiply by the reciprocal. So all we're doing by multiplying by the reciprocal on the first one, the first time, instead of dividing by that fraction, is we're cutting out a step. We're actually making it a little simpler. So 2 negatives that make a positive. I should go ahead and write out that I'm multiplying by the -3/2 over here, so I can keep track. My 3's go away, my 2's go away. I'm left with x. 2 goes into 2 once, and into 12 6 times. 6 times a -3 is -18. Of course, we can put this back in and check it. We have -2/3 times -18 is equal to 12. 3 goes into 3 once, and then 18 6 times. Negative times a negative is a positive, and I get 12 equals 12. Valerie needs 2/3 yard of fabric. So that's a good clue right there. So we have 2/3 of fabric to make each hat for the school play. Write and solve an equation to find how many hats she can make with that 6 yards. So that 6 yards is a total. So 2/3 times f, or in this case they put n, equals 6. Multiplying by a fraction means it's easiest if we multiply by the reciprocal on both sides. When we do that, we get n equals 9. So Valerie can make 9 hats. Samantha answered 4/5 of, so we have 4/5 of what? 4/5 of questions on her science quiz correctly. If she answered 8 questions correctly, write and solve an equation to determine how many questions were on the quiz. So a total of 8 questions correctly. So we have 4/5 times the quiz equals 8. So we multiply by 5/4 on both sides. We get Q equals 10. There are 10 questions on her test. You can always go back and check that out by taking 4/5 times 10 equals to 8. we get 8 equals 8, so it does check out. So our question was answered today by the same properties can be used to solve equations with decimal and fraction coefficients as they are with whole numbers. So of course we have our question, explain how what you've learned about solving one-step equations will help you solve two-step equations. We already know how to do one of the steps. Now you just put them together. Okay? You know how to do addition and subtraction and multiplication and division. So when you put them together, it's just taking it a little further.